Hi, sweeties. How are you doing? Welcome to Cimnanya, and thank you all so much for all the love and support. Hope you all are doing great. So I came across this video and I thought I'd share it here because all of a sudden slavery was beneficial to slaves, right? And this is this history that they have refused to teach in school. One thing is that these people really know what they are doing, and they have been ban African American history. Why? Because it is violent. How can how can somebody's history be violent? I mean, your history is what you are known for, right? How all of a sudden it is something they could not stand, but it was what their ancestors did, right? And then before we could say Jack, then of the books, one thing I have found out is that they actually do not want their kids to know what really happened or the next generation to understand how the very most of the things they did were. And that's one thing again, when you go to school, schools do not teach all this. Why would they teach that? Do you want them to review some certain things? Of course not. It makes them emotional. But when history is not being taught, it gets people that look like me unalive. That's why I am of the opinion that I teach it the way it is, right? You know what? Let's get into this.
The inception of English-speaking America started with a bunch of rich English noblemen who didn't want to do any work for themselves. So they brought over peasants, slaves, and used Native Americans to do the work for them. This group of people who were being exploited by these rich English noblemen, the Africans, the Native Americans, and the English-Irish peasants, banded together to fight against these noblemen. It was called Bacon's Rebellion in 1676. They lost that fight. But what resulted was the rich English noblemen creating a divide by colour, which still exists in America today. Watch this video in its entirety.
Jamestown. So the people who go to Jamestown are different than the people who went to Roanoke and Carolina. One thing, it's just men to Jamestown. But it's a special type of man. They were I don't know if mostly is the right name, they were largely from the noble class. They were privileged men. Their goal was to come to the Virginia colony, carve out a chunk of land, walk around, look for gold. They thought the Spanish found so much gold, surely the gold is everywhere. Take that gold, send it back to England, get themselves a mail order bride, of course, and peasants. And then they would become the new nobility for this new chunk of land that was with peasants farming in their name. And then they would send their goods back to Europe for trade purposes. The problem is, Jamestown was a disaster. Not only do they have starvation, not only do they have cannibalism, look up Jane. One of the reasons it's a disaster, the primary reason there's two reasons it's a disaster. One is the men who went were spoiled brats. They couldn't carve out a country from a chunk of land. They didn't know what work was. They were too privileged. They're walking around with their blunderbuss, shooting Bambi and Thumper, eating nuts and berries, trying to find gold so that they could bring people over to do the work for them. That's not how you do this. And so at the end of the day, the population of people who went to Jamestown set it up for the disaster. The other problem was there's no gold. They're on the wrong side of the continent. They needed to be in California or Nevada or Colorado, but not Virginia. Oops, missed. Landed in the wrong place. Well, but there will be gold. Because after John Smith stabilizes the colony by doing a military coup and forcibly taking over and turning everybody into a member of the commune so that everybody has to grow food after the famine, because I think they lost half the colony, and he's like, dude, that sucked. All right, here's how it's going to go. From now on, you will follow my orders. I will just beat the shit out of you. And the next thing you know, everybody's complying with this tyrant. And then after like, I don't know, 6, 7 years, he's like, screw this, I'm not rich, there's no gold here, gets on a ship and heads out. John Rolfe figures it out. He figures out how to make tobacco something you can market to a large population. Up until John Rolfe, you could get tobacco. The problem was it wasn't processed, it wasn't cured, which meant every time you took a puff, you'd cough. He figured out how to make it smooth. So yeah, maybe in the beginning when you're first learning how to smoke, you cough, but after a while you don't cough anymore. And this may be even more important, to create a consistent flavor. The English now have to ask themselves a question. Here's the question. Do we market tobacco intentionally to our own public? This is the 1610s. They're asking this question. Now you go, yeah, but they didn't know how bad it was. They did. Because by the 1590s, even though it wasn't a widespread marketed good, doctors had already been writing treatises saying, if you smoke tobacco, it will make you sick frequently and it will shorten your life expectancy. By the 1590s. So when the English in the 1610s are thinking, what do we do now? We have this deadly narcotic that's really addictive that we could market to our own people. It would generate money. The money would flow across the Atlantic to Virginia, and then Virginia wouldn't be a giant money pit where we're losing cash every day. Or we can just let the colony fail. They launched an ad campaign to intentionally addict their own population to a deadly narcotic that they knew was a deadly narcotic, and became the world's first ever drug dealer empire. Later they'll upgrade to opium. The reason all of this matters is the following. Think about the prospect of what we're talking about here. So I'm English. I'm poor, rich, middle, who cares? It doesn't matter. I get on a ship. I come to Virginia. If I'm free, they will deed me 40 acres of land. 40 acres of land they don't own. There's a Native American family that owns it. I now have the deed to 40 acres of land that somebody else is using, that is farming. Anyway, I got my blunderbuss, I'm walking out, and I see the family of Native Americans farming that land that's mine. And I take a shot at them, they hear the bang, they run, they fight, doesn't matter. The land will be mine. I will take it from them. There's a crop already in the field, which is great, because then come harvest time, I'm already set. And then I just continue to farm the land. All I need to do is get across the Atlantic. The rest is free, except for the ammo. In other words, at some level, the colonial settler project that the British unleash in what will become the United States of America was a wealth transfer scheme. There is no greater asset on the planet than real estate. Land you can grow food, land you can build a house, land you can build a factory, land you can find gold, land you can find coal, you can find oil. Land, 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 land. So to go from having none to suddenly having some with really nothing put into it other than you just happen to be English and you had to commit a little act of violence, that's a remarkable leap, that's a remarkable jump. But then we added a layer to it. Tobacco is labor intensive. In other words, yeah, I can grow tobacco as a single person, not farming, but I'm putting in a lot of hours. Now, it turns out tobacco at the time, at least, I don't know if it's still true, the tobacco seed was worth more than its weight in gold. So this is going to make me a lot of money. But if I'm a single farmer out there doing this, it's not really going to make me a lot of money fast. It's better than growing yams, it's better than growing wheat, it's better than raising chickens, for sure, but it's hard. And then once I have enough money, I'll buy a mule or ox or a horse or something. And then once I have enough money, I'll bring over an indentured servant. 3, 5 year, 7 year contract. I have a conflict of interest with my indentured servant. in 3, 5, or 7 years, they're going to get their freedom. I have to give them a gift as I let them go. They have every incentive not to work hard for the time they're working for me, but I want to squeeze every ounce of labor out of them. So it's kind of a violent event, and eventually they just start to run away. It becomes a nuisance. But once we've developed a level of sophistication that we can support this, we start bringing over slaves, which is almost right away. It did not take long before we're bringing over slaves. Think about what an indentured servant or a slave is. So I stole the land from the Native Americans. That was a wealth transfer event. Now I've brought over a slave or an indentured servant, and during the time that they're working for me, I don't compensate them for their labor. So I am literally stealing their life force. I am literally stealing their labor, turning it into tobacco, and then making money off of their labor and giving them nothing except food and rags to dress in and some form of shelter. But then,
with the defeat of Bacon's rebellion, the English noblemen split the poor Irish peasants from the Africans and the Native Americans by calling them white people and saying they are now all the same. Black people and Native Americans were now the only people who could be slaves in America. This would continue until 1865.
So this is all I got from the video, and it's really amazing that a lot of things were not even taught in school or in history classes. Why? They wouldn't know how barbaric some certain things were. That was why they took it off. Well, they still do not want to, want people to know about it. That was also one of the reasons why a colored person said that he learned more history from African Americans on TikTok than in school. Like all the years he spent in school, he did not learn anything. Why did they all of a sudden started screaming that slavery was beneficial? Or why all of a sudden they said ban all African American history? Why? Because it was violent, because it's not something like, that they want their children to know, or they want to teach like, how can somebody's history be violent? This was what you people did. How come all of a sudden you all are not proud of what happened? Not just all of a sudden, because they actually do not believe that they did some certain things to people that look like me. But at the same time, they also do not want that to be taught, right? So if you are running away from teaching something, or okay, actually it's a lie that they are lying that it never happened, or ban books. Why are you banning books if they did not happen? If they did not happen, you just ignore it. But they know for sure that it happened, but they just have to look for a way to cover it. Because the one that broke the camel's back was when they started that slavery was beneficial. They learned skills. Yes, they learned skills. Florida is where work goes to die, or this is where, So to tell you that most of the things that they did, but they are still one way or the other still happening, right? That's why they keep saying slavery was long ago. I mean, it was all over. I get over it. It didn't really go away. Jim Crow was long ago. Get over it. Was it really long ago? It is still all happening and all that, So these are the reasons why they will never teach the truth in schools, because they know how horrifying they've been all through the history. And they actually did steal, some, but they were okay. Yeah, they did steal some, but some were already, I remember each time I talk about some certain things, like when I sometimes mention about African Americans and all that, some would tell us that we were there before the whole thing. Like I learned to understand, I learned that some were there, but some were also stolen. True of us. I know that is actually true, and the rest of it. So, and I think the people that were they were the Ashanti, right? The Shona, Igbos, Yorubas, Mandinka, if I'm not mistaken, Fulani, and some of them, So yeah, the history, I didn't know, but it's really amazing. It's really great. But I love to see things like this, sometimes. That also, tells you that they have their reasons for saying that your own history was, or it's violent, because they cannot stand what most of their ancestors did. And the offspring of the ancestors also took after their ancestors. They are also doing amazingly great. See you all in my next video. Bye for now.